All right. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? As always, just going to give it a minute or two for some other people to come in. Just relax for a moment before we get into the meat of the discussion today. So, based off the thumbnail and the title, I'm sure you have an idea of what we're going to be talking about, but it's mostly just going to be a discussion about Superman and Luffy specifically, but also One Piece. Sort of how there are a lot of similarities between the two characters and the themes of their respective stories. Obviously, this is very relevant right now because of the Superman movie, which came out recently. But also, I think that the success of the Superman movie and, to an extent, the recent success of One Piece is indicative of just a growing desire for hopeful media, or at least more so than before. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that has shown up online or in other spaces, and how, above all else, One Piece and Superman are just great examples of hopeful stories and embodiments of all these, positive qualities that inspire us in the ways that stories are meant to. Partly why I'm doing this is because I just really want to talk about Superman, and I don't often get to talk about other stuff besides anime and specifically One Piece on this channel, which is fine. I made this channel because I could talk about One Piece and anime forever, pretty much. But if there was ever something I could talk about just as much, it would probably be comic books. I've been into comic books for a while. I've always just really enjoyed that type of storytelling, and naturally that means I've been pretty invested in the comic book movie industry, unfortunately, because the past however many years have just been very, very disappointing. But that's also another reason why I've loved Superman so much. It's just such a nice fresh breath of fresh air. That's the word, or the saying. Breath of fresh air. It's very creative. It's very inspired. Very passionate. But that's not the only reason it's doing so well. I think the reason why it's doing so well, the reason why people are enjoying it so much, and a lot of people are coming back to see this movie multiple times. Even just the average person is watching this movie a lot. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. My cat's meowing in the background, but a lot of people are enjoying this movie, I think, because of the way it makes them feel when, specifically at the end of the movie, when you're leaving that theater. It leaves you with a very hopeful feeling, very type of feel good ending, but in a meaningful way. I think that just is resonating with people very strongly right now. It's been a while since we've had a movie that's just so diehard into that sort of optimism that we get with Superman. And obviously this is because it is about Superman, so naturally those themes are going to come up. But there's something really attractive about hope right now. And I'm going to be getting a little bit into that later. For now, I want to take some time to really talk about One Piece as well, because ultimately at the end of the day, this is a One Piece channel, and One Piece is going to be a big part of this discussion. If not the most important part. So Superman and Luffy, um, very similar characters, and just want to say up front, I've never been a huge Superman fan. I actually kind of enjoyed the Man of Steel movie when it first came out because I didn't have any other strong point of reference for what Superman should be like. And it took me a while before I really got into the character, and I'm still not really into the character now. A couple years ago, I read All-Star Superman and Superman Birthright, and those were both really, really good, but besides those, I didn't dig too much deeper. I think I was among that common mindset that sometimes Superman can be a little bit boring. Specifically because he seemingly doesn't have a lot of weaknesses and all that. And I feel like this recent movie they made some smart decisions in trying to address those naysayers, I guess. First off, he's a much weaker Superman, which makes him feel more grounded. And as much as the movie pushes forward those themes of hope, it also kind of shows why that's kind of a weakness for Superman, and how it's not like Zack Snyder's Superman where the world just completely rejects him and it's like a cynical world versus a positive Superman, but it does sort of question Superman's ideals and challenges them in a way, which I think makes it more endearing when you're actually trying to get people to side with Superman. But anyway, my knowledge of Superman is pretty limited, is what I'm trying to say. But after watching this movie, that kind of changed because I've gotten more into the character now, and I've really started to enjoy the character specifically because of those themes that I'm talking about. I remember finishing the movie and just feeling like feeling in a similar way to how One Piece and Luffy make me feel, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And so that's kind of what the point of this stream is going to be, exploring those similarities, and why they're just so powerful right now. So Superman, we got a €5 from Mr. Bushido. Bushido, great to see you in the stream. Bushido says, Superman is what we needed. I want Batman to go into the despair, but not overdo it like what he's usually depicted in movies. Yeah, I agree. I think that based on what we've seen or what we've heard from James Gunn so far, it does seem like they're going for a little bit more of a lighthearted Batman, and lighthearted Batman means a much different thing than for other superheroes. So it's still going to be pretty like grim and dark. That's kind of his whole thing, but I think they're going to be more highlighting the fantastic comic booky side of Batman, which would make sense if this Batman is going to exist alongside this Superman. I don't think it would be as much of a tonal clash as if they brought in Robert Pattinson. But yeah, I agree. I'm down for a lighter Batman, just something different, I think. But anyway, we've talked about Superman, how it gives us that hopeful feeling and optimism, and it's sort of like that whole idea of indomitable human spirit, which we're also going to talk about later. And how the ironic thing about Superman is that he's an alien, but he's supposed to be more human than most. He's supposed to embody what are the utmost moralistic human values. And so Superman is a very humanistic character. He's very humanitarian, and so is One Piece. So is Luffy. But let's take it some time to really talk about some of the core aspects of the character of Superman, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Luffy. So number one, Superman is kind and compassionate by nature. This is just something. This is just who he is, right? This is something that is unshakably a part of him, and he gets this partly through the way that he was raised, but it's also just who he is. He's unshakable. He has an unshakable resolve and willpower. That is ideally, in most cases, that is like his biggest superpower, is that you can challenge him. If you can challenge his ideals, that's where his weaknesses will show. But 99% of the time, he's not going to budge on those ideals. Obviously, you have, the evil Superman stories and stuff like that. But again, 99% of the time, he's not going to budge on his moral compass. Has this effortless charisma to him that partly comes from his kindness, similar to Luffy. He just has a very magnetic personality, which is also what makes him so inspiring to other people within those stories. And he is simple-minded and naive, but he's also inspiring at the same time. His kindness and his dedication to the type of kindness that he embodies is very, very simple. It is very naive, almost childlike in a sense, not quite like Luffy, but it is very naive. I think a great example is in this movie, that first scene when he's sort of arguing with Lois about whether or not he should intervene with military conflicts to uphold his simple ideals. And to Lois, there's all these barriers and things you got to take into account. But to Superman, it's very, very simple. It's people are going to die. People need help. Somebody needs to do the right thing, so I'm going to do that thing. And this is obviously a little bit idealistic for the real world, but he is, because most people would see that it's too idealistic and sort of back down from that mindset, but he won't, and that's the biggest part of Superman, I think. Sorry, and in that same breath, he's not afraid to fight the status quo, and in most cases, he is against the status quo, because again, he comes off as overly idealistic, a little too simple-minded for some people to grasp. But he's not afraid to sort of push back against that if it goes against his values. And then he is calm, he is thoughtful, he's responsible, logical, and strategic, and he's tends to be more of a serious character. We're going to come back to this in a minute. But let's move on to Luffy. Again, same things here. Luffy is kind and compassionate by nature. He's got an unshakable resolve and willpower. We all know this. Effortlessly charismatic. For the same reason, his kindness and his compassion and his resolve makes him makes his personality so magnetic and attracts people around him. And he's also very simple-minded and naive, but he's also inspiring because of how much he commits to that, and because of the power within his mindset and in his worldview. In a world, again, similar to Superman, in a world where it's very oppressive, very cold and punishing towards this type of mindset, he just is kind, he is compassionate, and he's not gonna break in that area. And obviously, even more so than Superman, Luffy is not afraid to fight the status quo. He's not afraid to go against the grain or to fight authority if it contradicts something that he believes in, something that he cares about. But unlike Superman, he is impulsive, he's goofy, he is much more childlike. He's not the type to think about his actions too much before he takes them. He's not the type to uphold responsibility, and he's not a very calm character. He's not a very nervous personality either, but he's far from calm. And of course, he relies on his instincts more so than logic and strategy. His instincts are like his moral compass. He acts without thinking. So all of this is to say that these characters are very, very simple or similar, but they're also pretty different. I don't want to say that Luffy and Superman are like two sides of the same coin, or like two peas in a pod or anything like that. They're not that similar. I think there are a lot of other characters that are a little closer to Luffy in terms of their characterization. But there are a lot of similarities in the core of what makes them what they are. I think just to simplify it even further, it comes down to kindness, compassion, hope, and the commitment to upholding those, despite the fact that they are fairly simple-minded. So going back to what I was saying before about how Superman just makes us feel good, it makes us inspired, and so too does One Piece. But I've noticed, and you might have noticed this as well, that hopeful media, or at least hopeful content, is becoming more and more desirable, especially in the past like 3 years. Specifically, this comes in the form of what has been called Hopecore. Radar, good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Great to have you in the stream. Hope you're doing good today. But yeah, Hopecore. Hopecore is a trend that kind of started about like 2023, I would say. Let me actually see if I can pull something up real quick. Yeah, so I'm just reading this off of knowyourmeme.com, but Hopecore is a meme trend on TikTok and Instagram that originated in late 2023 going into 2024, featuring feel-good or hopeful edits, splicing together videos of people doing wholesome things. Featuring phrases like life is beautiful, things of that nature. I'm sure you've seen stuff like this, even if you're not that online. I feel like they've been kind of popping up in a lot of different places. The whole indomitable human spirit meme as well is a part of this trend. I always felt like this trend these types of memes, to me this is a very cool thing. One of the coolest things that's ever happened on the internet is just this overwhelming indulgence and flux of just hopeful content, and in a place where 90% of the time it's very, very toxic. I think it's very cool that we had a trend like this and continue to have trends like this now. But of course we also have some other examples of media like One Piece and Superman, Vinland Saga, Vagabond, a little less so, but these characters of Thorfinn and Musashi, Superman, Luffy are very inspiring. They're very appealing because of how they assert these humanistic values and ideas. And I think it's very interesting that this has been popping up so much in the way that it has in the past few years. I think it says a lot about the state of the world right now. Also, just in general, I think people are a little bit tired of the usual toxic content that we see so much online. I mean, feel free to add into this if you have any thoughts. But I think that the vast majority of people crave hopeful content, crave hopeful messages. And the Hopecore movement shows that it's not just within storytelling or fiction, it's just in general. It's something people want to see, and I think that it's a common thing to say that the things that you consume and the people that are around you, those are sort of what will be reflected back to you. And so this idea that we just sort of overload the internet with positivity leads to actually creating positive change in people's lives, or at least just a little bit each day can make people's lives a little more positive. I think that's really cool, but I also think it just it's a nice little glimpse into what people are really feeling lately. Green Snow. When I think why we tell stories, I think it's to raise the human experience, whether it be inspiring hope or showing us certain morals or things to live by. Yeah, I completely agree. And you bring up a good point about showing us certain morals and things to live by. It's not just about hope, it's about sort of offering us direction, giving us a unique way of looking at ourselves and some of our own challenges and some of the experiences that we have in the world, and offering us a new perspective of looking at it from. And these things can be very refreshing and very rejuvenating for us, because we spend so much time in our heads and we spend so much time online, that to sort of be pulled out of that for like a few hours or like 20 minutes if it's a show or something, or just for a few seconds if it's in a meme like this, is really, really meaningful to us, because it forces us out of our own mind and out of these cycles of thinking, and allows us to reflect, I think. So I think that's a very good point. Sorry, let me just check something on my other monitor real quick. But yeah, if you're just coming in, we've been talking a little bit about Hopecore and specifically how Superman embodies Hopecore, and I think it's a huge reason why it's doing so well. If you're online at all, so many of the memes are just about like positivity and how the movie inspires us to be kind and better people, and just leaves you feeling really good. And that's kind of a feeling that people crave in stories and just in general. But also Luffy and One Piece embody these things as well. Something I want to add more to the One Piece side of the conversation, I want to talk a little bit about the live action. I remember, I mean, if you guys have noticed this as well, let me know. But I remember when the live action first came out, so many of the reviews were saying how hopeful and wholesome and lighthearted it is, and how inspiring it is, and that was kind of the prevailing sentiment that people were taking away from it. And I think this really stood out to me because these were people that had never seen One Piece before. A lot of them hadn't really seen anime or anything like that before. So for a lot of people, when this first came out, the live action was their first experience and glimpse into what One Piece is all about, and especially who Luffy is as a character. And they were sort of marketing it this way as well. I remember a lot of the directors for the episodes online, and Matt Owens, of course, were talking about how we want to do something like Game of Thrones. We want to do something like this sort of big grand fantasy mainline TV show, but we want to put forth the themes of hope and humanity and connection and all those things, because those are a huge part of One Piece. And I guess they really believed in those themes and how they could make the show stand out. And it seemed to have worked pretty well. I don't know if anyone else agrees or not, but that was something I noticed a lot, seeing going around. And I think it really tells you a lot about what One Piece as a story is all about. I mean, you have this character of Luffy, and I talk a little bit about this in my latest video, so if you want to hear me go more in depth onto Luffy and what he means for One Piece as a whole, check out my last video, which is a character analysis of Luffy. I'm not going to go super in depth in this stream, but the gist of it, and I'm sure most of you already know, is that One Piece is a very, very dark world. On the surface, it's very colorful and fun and whimsical, but it's a very, very dark reality. And Luffy represents this sort of ray of light within that world, a beacon, if you will. He's a symbol of hope. Again, similar to Superman, he's a symbol of hope. He's a symbol of the human spirit. He's a symbol of kindness and compassion in their most simplistic, basic form, which to some may seem too idealistic, and to a degree is too idealistic, but yet he embodies and affirms these aspects of life nonetheless. And I again, like Superman, I think that those themes and the way that they're depicted is a huge reason for One Piece's mainstream success that it had in the live action, that is. I think that when we get stories that are so earnest towards those ideals, we just can't help but be attracted to them. Everyone's different. Some people don't like that sort of thing at all, right? So I don't want to make it seem like these are blanket statements for everybody's taste. But for the most part, they're popular because we like to be inspired. We like to feel inspired. We like to feel hopeful because in real life, those qualities are often punished, often not rewarded, for lack of a better term, and they get whittled away over time. And like Green's Now 40 was saying, they show us certain morals and things, and in that way they remind us of these morals. They remind us of how we can reflect on ourselves and all that. Zigzag, nice to see you here. Welcome to the first stream. It's been a minute since I've streamed, so I do apologize for that for anyone who's new or anyone who's enjoyed the streams in the past. I have a few streams planned for the next few weeks, but I'll talk more about those at the end. Yeah, a lot of Greens Now, a lot of people did not expect that. That's a key thing. I'm really glad you brought that up, is that these types of messages are not expected. They're not the norm, and it's why I've really come around to resonating with Superman's claim that Superman is punk rock, right? Like that kindness is punk rock. Kindness is going against the status quo. When I first heard that line in the movie, it was a little cringy. It was a little cringy. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little corny. Especially because I used to be really, I still am to an extent, but I used to be really, really into punk rock as a genre of music, but also as a movement. And so I was like, Superman's, like Lois says in the movie, Superman's not really punk rock. But by the end, I kind of felt convinced, because it's true. It's true that these types of morals, this type of unbreakable kindness and resolve towards hope, they are not the norm. And so by definition, Superman kind of is punk rock. Yeah, but anyway, that is I think that sort of surprise element of these themes, that sort of, it's what makes them feel so refreshing, and is ultimately what makes them so successful in these shows and movies and stories in general. Zigzag says Luffy is a Tao trope character, dumb except when it comes to reading people and doing the right thing, revolutionary savant. I'm curious, are you talking specifically about Tao as in Taoism? Because I completely agree. I completely agree with that. I've had a video in the drafts for the longest time that is sort of talking about how Luffy represents Taoism, and how Taoism is generally portrayed within One Piece. Because I myself am like very much into Taoism and Zen Buddhism as well. And I've noticed a lot of those qualities and virtues displayed by Luffy. So yeah, I do agree with that, if that's what you're getting at. But regardless, yeah, Luffy is a revolutionary savant for sure. So yeah, I think we kind of covered everything about Superman. I guess I just want to touch a little bit more on how Superman differs from Luffy as a character. Earlier we were saying he's a lot more calm, thoughtful, and logical. He thinks a lot more about what he does than Luffy. He's less childish in his personality. But despite that, I think they would get along pretty well. I think they get along pretty well because of how, because of their core values, right? It would be very interesting to see some sort of crossover between Superman and Luffy, because I can't even imagine what that interaction would be like. Like other shonen characters like Naruto, Goku, that is a little easier to picture. I don't know, it would be interesting, especially since there are so many. There are so many different iterations of Superman. All right, I'm kind of rambling now. I've kind of said the main things I want to, so I'm gonna start slowing down a bit. Let me check the chat. Taoism, yeah. He's a perfect block allegory. The block is excellent at being a block, and that's perfect. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot I want to say about that, but I think I'd rather collect my thoughts a little more on Taoism before I get into that. Maybe I'll do a stream in the near future about Taoism if people are interested. But yeah, Greens Now, I do still want to do that video. I think that a lot of people who enjoy One Piece would, at the very least, find Taoism interesting. One thing I do want to bring up about Taoism, as long as we're here, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so this was in opening 25, the peak, in Wano at the end. This is kind of what led me to wanting to do a video about Luffy and Taoism. Is this an Enso circle? It's straight up the exact same thing. It's a big part of Zen philosophy. Let me see what it says here. Yeah, Zen Buddha's philosophy, which is a little bit different than straight up Taoism, but a lot of the same virtues can be found. I think the key thing here for this discussion: enlightenment, emptiness, freedom. I don't know if you guys, yeah, okay. Enlightenment, emptiness, freedom, and the state of no mind. And another element of Taoism would be the concept of Wu Wei, which is a Chinese term for non-action, which has a little bit more nuance to its meaning. But the idea is just sort of being one with your own nature and one with your own expression, similar to what Zigzag was saying, the perfect block allegory. But yeah, this Megami Ishitani did direct this opening. I'd be curious to hear more about her perspective on One Piece, because she really like fundamentally understands the story. I feel like if she weren't in the realm of animation, she would be great at talking about One Piece on YouTube or analyzing it, because she has really nuanced perspectives on things. Lots of little details that elevate the story in a way that you don't often get. adaptations. But yeah, we've kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about. It wasn't meant to be a super long stream. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts on Superman, why I think it's so successful, and how I think that relates to One Piece's recent success in America, both with the live action and the growing popularity of the anime. And it's because these characters are, one, very similar, and two, it's what unites them is that hopeful messaging, that affirmation of kindness, that, as Green's now said, it's not something we often get in media, and especially not in Western media. So those things are very refreshing. They're very attractive to people right now. And Hopecore is indicative of that. We are seeing a rise in Hopecore again with Superman. And I think that the fact that other stories like Vinland Saga, Vagabond, these characters often get associated with it, it means that this stuff usually starts with storytelling first. I mean, storytelling, again, as Green's now said, is where we get a lot of our values. It's where we most get inspired to reflect, because they break us out of our monotony of the everyday life that we have. They offer us new perspectives. But yeah, so if anyone else has any thoughts on this, on Superman, on One Piece, or if you can think of any other stories that kind of fall in line with Hopecore, please feel free to share. I'm going to start wrapping up very shortly. If you haven't yet seen my latest video, I highly recommend you do. It's actually pretty relevant to this conversation. I'm not just plugging it just to plug. But as long as we are talking about that, I should talk a little bit about my plans going forward. So as of right now, I'm not really doing an upload schedule. Sort of taking the approach of whenever a video is ready, it'll come out. With that being said, I am almost constantly working on something, so you can be sure that if there's not a video coming out for a while, there's one being worked on, right? My next video, it kind of falls in line with this discussion. I'm going to be doing a very, very brief video on Vinland Saga, which should come out this weekend. I don't know how many people on this channel have read or watched Vinland Saga, but Vinland Saga is a story that means a lot to me. It's probably my second favorite anime of all time. And the manga, if you don't know, is ending... it ended today in Japan. I don't know when the English will come out, but the last chapter just came out. So I've been reflecting about that story a little bit, and I want to do sort of like a final thoughts on the story video. So that'll come out this weekend. Hey, what's up, Trash Lapras? Always great to see you here. Metaphor Refantasio. Interesting. I know almost nothing about that game, other than the fact that it was a contender for Game of the Year. But the idea, if you're saying it's a Hopecore story, that has me very interested, because I never would have suspected that just from the outside looking in. I'll have to play that. I think it's on Game Pass, so might be able to download that at some point soon. I was thinking about playing the Claire Expedition 33 game. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, because it does have me very interested. Um, Berserk, yeah, I was thinking about Berserk too when I was looking into setting up this stream, and like for the thumbnail, I put Thorfinn and Musashi. Guts might have been a better choice. I know for a lot of people he's a very hopeful and inspiring character, especially because of how much trauma he goes through. As you say, the most awful things keep happening and he keeps struggling, but he keeps going, right? The only reason I haven't talked about it much in this stream, or why I didn't put it in the thumbnail or in any of the examples here, is because I haven't read Berserk, and I'm not sure if or when I will. I know it's amazing. I know for a fact, just from looking at the art and just from hearing people talk about the story, I know it's incredible and arguably one of the greatest of all time. To be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure that I could like stomach the darker sides of it, I guess. I'm normally okay with all that sort of stuff. I can handle in stories and I welcome it because, like you said, the putting characters through some dark stuff can make for some really, really beautiful storytelling. I mean, it's a big part of Thorfinn's story, and what makes it so powerful is because of how much he actually went through and suffered. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure yet. I've just kind of been going back and forth with myself on that. But I feel like at some point, I'm just going to give in just out of pure curiosity. Because I am very interested in the other side of that coin. Because I know it's very dark and grim, but I also know it is very hopeful as well. So I'm curious to see that side of the story. And I feel like it's not something that I can fully grasp unless I actually dive all the way into it, you know? Yeah, Musashi, it's interesting how Musashi gets related to Hopecore because his story is much less or much more removed from those themes. I think what's important is this panel here, and that's kind of why I've included it. This panel is not the only one like this, but there's this idea that even though Musashi kind of struggles with this and doesn't necessarily get there, at least where I'm at in the story is pushing forth this idea that strength is actually kindness. Like kindness and compassion, those are what make you like a good warrior, not how many people you can kill or whatever. It's the people that can be bold enough, be brave enough to be more peaceful. That's kind of the general ideology of Vagabond. But Musashi as a character is someone who very much struggles with this concept, and he does kind of create his own problems, as you say. But there are a lot of little moments. There are a lot of little moments like this throughout the story where he kind of gets that reality check. And where I'm at in like the later stages of the story right now, he's kind of slowly coming to that realization. He's gradually getting more and more tired and just lost within his current way of life, which is just slowly not providing him the same fulfillment it used to. And I don't know if Inoue will ever finish the story, but I imagine that somewhere at the end he would kind of have Musashi come full circle and fully realize that he needs to abandon that behavior. Mushoku Tensei. Rudius is a habitual fuck up, but he picks up and makes a little progress every time. It's more about interpersonal struggle than political struggle. That is very interesting. That's again another anime I have not seen. That let me just Mushoku Tensei's an isekai, right? Jobless. Yeah. Is this the one that had the I'm not gonna say it on stream, but like that really questionable scene in season 2, or am I thinking of a different show? Either way, I have heard some good things about this. It's been lower on my priorities because it is an isekai, and I'm not like a huge isekai fan. But that aspect that you're talking about does make me very interested. And I may have to add it to the list. Yeah, honestly, that does sound very interesting. I will keep that in mind for the future. But anyway, before I was mentioning that I'm releasing a Vinland Saga video this weekend, after that, I'll post about this later, but I am planning on taking a little bit of a break from releasing videos. I'll probably still do streams here and there, but I need a bit of a break in this last part of the summer, especially because I've just been back to back working on videos for most of the year. But also I want to take some time to reflect on the videos I have made and the videos that I want to release when I come back. I've already got some ideas. And if anyone else has any sort of topics that they want to see in a video, feel free to let me know either in the stream or in the comments of another video or on the Discord server if you want. Next week, next Wednesday, I'm going to be going live with the Eternal Dawn over on their channel. If you don't know, they're sort of like a One Piece discussion podcast channel. So I'm going to be going live with them to talk about One Piece, of course. More details on that as we get closer. Then the following week, I am going to be doing a stream with one of my good friends. Me and her are going to be talking about Kobe. So it's going to be sort of like a Kobe analysis review stream, I guess. I think Kobe as a character has grown on me a lot, and I think a lot of people are coming around to appreciating him more, so that should be interesting. Last thing before I wrap up here, I want to read a little bit more of the chat. Mushoku is the king of all isekai. Yeah, this one of the best anime of all time. People struggle with it because Rudeus begins as a terrible person and he ends as a less terrible person. He fucks up a lot. That is very interesting. I've never heard of an isekai doing something like that. So yeah, I will definitely add that one to the list and keep that in mind when I'm watching anime. 100%. You've convinced me. Yeah, I've heard some of my friends talk about it too. One of my friends said that it was like the OG isekai, like one of the first to really kind of do it, sort of thing. So it'll be cool to see that. Sam says, I love Kobe. I love Kobe too. I hope to see you in that stream because we're going to be going all in on Kobe from the beginning to the end. Amazing character. But yeah, glad that you guys are interested in that. I'm glad that you guys stopped by for the stream. I really appreciate the support. This was kind of a more chill stream compared to some of my others. Again, I really just kind of wanted to talk about Superman and why I really love hopeful stories and why I think other people love them as well. And I appreciate all of your input in that discussion. I hope to see you guys in future content. And if you're not already in the Discord server, I highly recommend you join. There's a link in my channel bio if you want to join. Again, it's a very chill space where we just talk about anime and other stuff. If you ever want to like talk more about some of this other stuff that is not One Piece related, like isekai or Superman or anything of that nature, that's kind of the place to do it, I would say, because I'm not always going to be doing non One Piece content. It's not something that the algorithm really likes when I do. But yeah, look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Stay tuned for more updates, and as always, thank you for your support. And real quick, thank you guys for 2,000 subs. I posted about it earlier, but we just hit 2,000 today. It's a really big deal to me. It means a lot that a lot of you are supporting me and continue to support me and the channel, and wouldn't be the same without you guys. So again, thank you. See you guys in the next one. PK Buggy signing out.